In today's Leeds news, Joseph's Real Madrid snub, Buendia available, Ampadu Award, injured fan wakes up, Coufal linked to Leeds, changes to the Premier League transfer window, Kelleher green light and surprise Celtic link. Morning folks, welcome back to The View for Wednesday morning the 14th of May with your Leeds United news. A good lot of chunky stuff to get into. There's a lot of transfer rumours. We're only 2.5-3 weeks away from the opening of the transfer window. We'll get some details on changes to that as well. Last night we did do the podcast with Dan Moylan from the Square Ball. You can check that out on the channel if you want to, as well as our interviews from the Leeds Legends game which took place last weekend. Also, just to plug it really quickly, the Creator Cup is taking place in July. Details down below in the description for that, where all of the Leeds United YouTubers and podcasters are getting together to play a match for Prostate Cancer UK and raise some much needed funds for a charity that I personally have very close to my heart. But we'll crack on with the news and we'll get stuck into it today. And we'll start off with Matteo Joseph. And 3 years ago, Matteo Joseph joined Leeds United from Espanyol, and although he might not have had the most impactful season last year, he is still only 21 years of age and has a lot of time to mature and peak just yet. In a piece with Arsenal fan and YouTuber Papa Pincus, Joseph said that he had a major side interested in signing him before he made the decision to join Leeds and turned them down to make the Leeds move happen. And on the topic, he said the following: "My mother told me one day that Madrid wanted to sign me for the under-19s, and I think of how difficult it was to get into this first team. I'm really happy with the choice I made because maybe I wouldn't be here. The sporting director was Spanish, Victor Orta, and when he met my family, he convinced us there is talk of a potential loan move for Matteo Joseph next season to get some more consistent, much needed game time for him, as well as the reports last week about Real Betis interested in an £8 million move for him, where Leeds are said to put a £12.5 million price tag on his head. Joseph also accepted that last season probably wasn't his best season, but does believe that next season will see better from him individually. Let's move on and talk about the likely link that was always going to pop up at some point, and it's Emi Buendia. And at the beginning of last season, Leeds tried to sign Emi Buendia, which was confirmed by Angus Kinnear on the Square Ball podcast. They tried again in January. Daniel Farke commented on it, but the player then decided to move to Bayer Leverkusen instead in order to play Champions League football. Buendia was coming back after a very significant injury, and that can have an impact on a player's season, but even considering that, it was a fairly disappointing loan that he's had over at Bayer Leverkusen, who do have an option to buy the player for £17 million, but have decided, according to reports today from Germany, not to take up that option, and Buendia will return to Aston Villa. Villa are said to need one big sale before the PSR cut-off point in order to avoid any issues there, and Leeds have been made aware that Buendia is available. During his time at Bayer Leverkusen, Buendia started 3 games with 10 more appearances off the bench and only scored 2 goals and no assists during that time either. Sports Illustrated in Deutschland claimed that Buendia will be leaving the Bay Arena, and Buendia now has been linked with a move to Leeds United again this summer. Daniel Farke did speak very highly of the number 10 before, and could now be in a position to get the move done should he see fit. And back in January, Farke said the following: "I read the comments because I'm interested in football and the Premier League. I've worked with Buendia. He was one of my best players at Norwich. I really rate him, but I don't comment on players who right now are playing at different clubs." Prior to the injured season that Buendia had back in 22-23 for Aston Villa, he clocked up 27 starts, 38 games overall, only scored 5 goals and had 2 assists. When you put that in contrast with, say, Jorginho Rutter, who moved from Leeds last season and went to Brighton, and his first season there, he only started 19 games but also clocked up 5 goals and added 3 assists in that time. Leeds would likely want to have a more creative and a more impactful G&A from a number 10 if they are to bring that in the summer. But a £17 million fee or less that is being rumoured might make the deal a little bit easier to swallow, and Leeds could, if they can get his form back, bring in a good player for a decent amount of money. So there are some positives and also some small red flags just to keep an eye on the back of coming back from a serious injury as well. Let's move on to a good news story for Ethan Ampadu. And Leeds captain Ethan Ampadu has been recognised for his work in the community, and Leeds have announced that he has been named the PFA Community Champion, recognising his work and commitment to the community's visits as well as educational initiatives throughout the campaign. On getting the award, Ethan Ampadu said the following: "I feel really honoured to receive this award, and it's honestly been a pleasure to take part in these different visits and meet so many different people throughout the season." Ampadu went on to say how at home he feels at Leeds United and how excited he is to meet fans. You forget how young Ethan Ampadu is as the captain of Leeds United. He's still only 24 years of age. Has a very mature head on his shoulder, and these kind of acts also show a very mature character of the player. Maybe with the exception of the parade, but I think if you can excuse him to be himself in those moments. If you can't enjoy those moments, what's the point in doing this at all? So yeah, great to see him, and great to show that mature head on his shoulders, and the work that he's doing in the community is very, very important. But let's move on, talk about a more serious story with a positive ending, at least for now. And most people will have heard of the story of Edward O'Brien, who fell from a tree during the Leeds United celebration parade and picked up significant injuries that resulted in Edward going into a coma. There was a huge outpouring of support for Edward and his family on the back of this, with a GoFundMe page being set up with a target of £750, which exceeded that and ended up in and around £15,000, with Larry Nance Jr. adding £5,000 to that kitty as well, which was great to see. In some good news that came out yesterday, the family shared a statement where they announced that Edward had woken up from the coma. The long-term effects of the fall and the impact of the injuries always had a concern that there may be some longer term damage that they would be concerned about, but again, in some good news in this statement, they say that there is a fantastic chance of a good recovery. So great news for Edward and his family. Our thoughts go out to them as well at this time, and we wish Edward a speedy recovery on the back of this, and it's great to hear that news today. Let's move on, talk about our transfer links today, and there's plenty floating around, and several reports yesterday have linked Leeds with a move for West Ham right back Vladimir Coufal. But Everton are also said to be interested in the player. There's a trend, isn't there? There's a trend. Leeds will need to add some experience to the squad next season and cover for Jayden Bogle in that right back position, with Sam Byram expected to move on in the next couple of weeks. Coufal will be a free transfer, and it was at West Ham from 2020. And TalkSport claimed that Leeds and Everton are the two English sides considering making a move for the West Ham fullback. Coufal is 32 years of age though, and doesn't really fit the 49ers' normal recruitment model, which tends to be players under the age of 26. But as I say, experience is needed, and Premier League level experience will be needed with the squad. Leeds need to be creative with the transfers, bringing in important players in important positions, but also fleshing out the squad with some creative deals, as I say, using that word again. Fulham did try to sign Coufal back in January, but at that time West Ham rejected the offer, and now Coufal is a free transfer. Coufal isn't what you would describe as a spectacular fullback, but as I say, he is a very solid Premier League fullback that would offer experience there. And Robert Snodgrass did describe Coufal as a clever and disciplined footballer who was very tactically astute. He also said that he does like to bomb forward and puts in a mean cross. Jayden Bogle is likely to be Leeds United's first choice right back next season. They will need that experience cover behind him as well, and as a free agent, could be a decent deal. But the other side to this coin, and to balance this out, it could also just be agent talk trying to drum up interest in a player who is out of contract. But Leeds have been linked with a couple of right backs. They do need cover, so no smoke without fire. But let's move on, talk about some changes to the Premier League and EFL transfer windows. And this summer we'll see the transfer window open on June 1st, stay open for 10 days, close for 6 days, and then reopen again as normal. And this is to accommodate clubs that will be taking part in this summer's Club World Cup and allow them to bolster their squads heading into the tournament. But more changes are said to be coming, and the Premier League and the English Football League have reportedly reached an agreement over changes to the summer transfer window. Clubs in the UK will have been informed that this summer's transfer window will shut 4 hours earlier than the previous summer windows. The report states that the move from 11 p.m. to 7 p.m. is designed to allow club staff to work within normal working hours. And the hope of bringing this in is to minimise the impact on staff and workers who work at clubs across the country. However, there has been some concern raised by football clubs around England who feel that having the window close 4 hours earlier than the continent puts them at a disadvantage. No official decision has been reached just yet, and the FA haven't discussed any changes to the January transfer window just yet. But I think the point on this is, if you can't get your transfer business done in 3 months, what difference is 4 hours going to make at the end of a window? Clubs leaving it till the very last minute to get deal done is interesting, but not always the best practice. There will be still a 2 hour extension to that 7 p.m. deadline due to the fact that they have a little bit of working admin room afterwards to get these deals done, but we'll keep an eye on that. Let's move on to the Caoimhín Kelleher story from yesterday and some updates on this. And yesterday we had reports around Caoimhín Kelleher and Leeds' potential interest and apparent inquiry about the availability of the goalkeeper. A new report today from the Daily Star says that Liverpool have green lit and will sanction an exit of Caoimhín Kelleher from Liverpool to Leeds United this summer should a move be made. As mentioned yesterday, Newcastle and Bournemouth are one or two of several clubs interested, but in this report in the Daily Star, they claim that Newcastle and Bournemouth are the front runners to get the deal done for Kelleher. From a logical perspective, and a 40 million transfer fee for a keeper with 12 months left on his deal, if Newcastle were to get a deal done, Leeds could potentially then move for another keeper they'd been linked with in Nick Pope, and a very, very solid and calming keeper in the Premier League. And Nick Pope, as I say, has already been credited with interest from Leeds this summer. The report states the £40 million fee may end up slowing interest in Kelleher and might even scupper a move for the player unless he pushes for a move again. The fee may actually start to drop then if he does push for a move and Liverpool don't get the interest in the keeper. They could be in a situation where a lot of these clubs could do what's happened with Trent Alexander-Arnold this year and let him wait out his contract and sign him for a free transfer next summer. This hasn't really always worked as a good strategy for Liverpool, so that fee may well come down in the next couple of weeks, and it could be a situation where the keeper move is left till late in the window to see if a deal can be done. And then move on to the final transfer story of the day, and a surprise link up north in Scotland. And in a slightly surprising link today, the Boot Room Football claimed that Leeds have watched and have interest in Celtic attacker Dyson Maeda. There's a lot of clubs in this list, so here we go. Leeds, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, Villa, Brentford and West Ham, as well as Crystal Palace, are all said to have watched the attacker and have some level of interest in the player. Maeda registered 33 goals and 11 assists last season for Celtic and could be available for in and around or slightly less than £25 million. Maeda can operate on either wing, right or left, can play as a number 10 as he did under Ange Postecoglou at Celtic, or play as a number 9, which he did more often than not this season under Brendan Rodgers at Celtic. Sky Sports' Lee Hendry, speaking to the Football League World, explained that Maeda's scoring north of the border could mean a solid signing for Leeds should they make the move, and he said the following. Leeds are obviously linked with Celtic forward Maeda, 62 goals in 152 appearances for Celtic. I've said it all along, Leeds are going to be linked with so many centre forwards. Patrick Bamford probably isn't going to be around. Pirro has done very well, but at times I think that he's more of a 10, so Leeds will need someone who is a bit more prolific. He's got experience and he has scored goals. The jump from coming down from Scotland to stepping into a Leeds team who will be expected to compete, you do think it could be half of a gamble. But when you look at the numbers he's produced for Celtic, I don't think it would be a bad signing. This is going to be a tough one to call. The point around the standard of Scottish football will always come up when you're linked with a player at Celtic or Rangers. The last striker Leeds took from Celtic was Mark Viduka. That worked out pretty well. Virgil van Dijk moving down from Celtic to Liverpool as well. In the more recent history, Matty O'Reilly coming down last season has done pretty well for Brighton after back of getting an injury early on. Ignoring Maeda's scoring in the Scottish Premier League, looking at his Champions League only, he made 9 Champions League starts for Celtic last season and he scored 4 goals in that time with an XG of only 2.8, so he overachieved on that one. Personally, I watch an awful lot of Celtic. As an Irish football fan, I watch an awful lot of their games and I like Maeda. I think he's a really good player. He's a good age as well. His history is showing he's scoring more goals as he gets older, heading towards his peak years. And it could be decent value for Leeds. They will be looking for a striker or an attacker who can operate in multiple positions. And that, for me, is very much within the 49ers transfer mould. Under 28 years of age and can play in multiple positions. So we'll keep an eye on it. Could be a rumour, but we'll keep an eye on that over the next coming days and weeks. Reminder again, check out the podcast last night with Dan Moylan from the Square Ball. And I'll be back tomorrow morning for more Leeds news. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you soon. Bye.